Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Lori Amin, will interview published authors to chat about their work, journey to getting published, and their book recommendations. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. Today's guest is Kristy Bromberg, also known as K Bromberg. In this interview, we chat about her writing process, her latest book, Flirting with 40, and Hard to Handle. And now let's go to the interview. Hi, Kay. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Kristy. That's what the K stands for.
Yeah. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, usually if you call me K, I will look around who are you talking to? So, yeah, my name was too long to fit on a book, so it ended up being K.
Gotcha. I was wondering.
Yeah, there's no mystery to it for me.
Okay.
I write contemporary romance with a little bit of sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a mom of 3, which has been fun during this pandemic and doing homeschooling. And I'm pretty typical soccer mom, softball mom, never have enough time, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So when are you writing now that the kids are home and everything's happening? When is the magic happening?
The irony is that this is one of my busiest writing schedules I've had in the longest time.
Really? Oh my gosh.
So it's been interesting. But are you asking what I'm writing or how am I writing?
No. How are you writing? Are you figure out schedule? You doing pockets of time or?
I do the best I can.
Okay.
My theory is have laptop will travel.
Oh,
so
okay.
My kids aren't, I have one that's 14 and then I have a 10 and 11-year-old. So I'm not comfortable leaving them home.
Mm-hmm.
A 14-year-old. Yeah. But then it's massive fights. So for me, I try and work when they're on Zoom for school. And then I usually take off the afternoons because I'm going to and from soccer. And then I start writing again about 9:30 till 1 a.m.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, that's a schedule. So let's talk about what inspired you to become a writer.
I've always liked to write, but I never really thought this would be a career. I ironically, a lot of people have done this. I read 50 Shades, and I was like, I can do this. I read 50, and then I went into Rain Miller and Jodi Ellen and Sylvia Day, and Laura Lynn. I just kind of read people that are all my friends now. And I was like, okay, these people are moms, and they just decided to do it, and they were finding success. And at the time I had 3 kids under the age of 5, and my husband was traveling a lot for work. And so I needed something at nighttime when they went to bed to stimulate my brain. Okay. So for me, I started outlining my first book, which was Driven.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I remember reading Driven years ago. So what was that journey to get that book published?
For me, I queried a couple agents and I was rejected. And then I kind of started researching. I was not in book world at all. I wasn't a blogger. I didn't read blogs. I didn't do anything. I just kind of was a friend said, you should read this book. Or actually my mom told me to read 50. She said, Kristy, you need to meet this Christian guy. And then some other friends started recommending books. So I didn't really know the blog scene or anything. So I just started researching, and I realized I could upload to Kindle, to Amazon, and other platforms. So I kind of self-taught myself what to do. And that was what I did. It wasn't some arduous journey. I just kind of pushed publish and hoped I sold 100 copies.
Yeah, and you probably have. So how many books have you written so far?
I think I'm finishing 25.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Let me see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 25 or 26, I think.
Wow, that's a lot of books. So how do you keep the writing schedule? Do you write one book at a time, or do you write multiple books? Do you have multiple books?
I can't write. I have to write one book at a time.
Okay.
I even struggle reading books when I'm writing it because I adopt the voice. So for me, I write one book at a time, and then I'm usually editing one while I'm writing, so I have to take time off while I'm editing, because if not, I just mess them all up. So yeah, I'm a one book girl. I can't cheat.
Yeah, I can feel it. And so do you follow an outline, or do you see where the story leads? Yeah.
I used to be a really, really strict outliner. Like,
Yeah.
I have to handwrite my outlines. I'm really old school.
Okay.
I handwrite them because to me that gets it from the paper to my brain. And then about 30% into the book, I never look at it again because it's already there. But it's just, it's like the process for me. The last 2 books, I really haven't outlined, but I noticed that I struggle a lot more when I don't have an outline.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think the best parts of my books are the parts that aren't outlined. They're that spontaneous. So even though I have something, the book kind of takes on a mind of its own.
Yeah. So how do you connect with your characters? Like, how do you get to know them? Like, do they come to you, or do you do some research or try to figure out like background information or what the character's gonna look like or it's gonna work on?
Usually they come to me. Like the series, one of the series I'm working on right now is a sports series. So I have 4 sisters who are sports agents. They're saving their family sports agency. And so they each are going to a different sport. For me, I like sports, so that's an easy one. I'm just picking 4 popular sports. But a lot of times I typically have one character in my head and then I have to build the other ones around them. And sometimes they're not there at all. And that's when I really struggle. But I think for me, the connection is I have a hard time writing really lighthearted romances because I feel like there needs to be something emotional to connect the reader. So I usually have a little bit of real in each of my romances. And that's what I hear is what connects people. But then I do like my next one's a really lighthearted, fun-loving one. So, I mean, you just kind of have to bounce around.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it just depends on the season where you're writing, too. Like we're in a really tough situation, so maybe just having something lighter might be easier.
And that's why I broke my writing schedule and wrote this book just because it kind of called to me. It's about a woman who's turning 40 and she's kind of struggling. And so she meets a guy who is younger than her, who kind of just challenges her to like, hey, live life, like stick your toes in the sand, howl at the moon, like see where it takes you. And then who knew he would be her happily ever after.
Yes, and let's talk about, flirting at 40. So you mix an age gap with forced proximity, and there's like a corporate retreat, there's like he's a doctor, like he's not that young,
No, he's not that young. It's not like 18-year-old and the 40-year-old.
Yeah, no, he's not. So what was like the source of inspiration? Like, was he just, you wanted something funner or easier to write or less angsty or?
This story has been on my radar for a while, and I don't think there's enough romances out there for women who are, I don't want to say older because that makes me older. But it's always the late 20s, early 30s. And I think there's a confidence that comes to women when they reach their 40s. We're a little bit more secure in who we are. But we also struggle with that and struggle with, am I trying to act too young? Am I living enough? Am I doing? And so for me, I just wanted something that the title is what I knew first, which is really rare for me. And so then I kind of, for some reason, I got lost on a website about corporate retreats. I clicked the wrong button. And then from there, I just couldn't get the idea out of my head. So.
Yeah, I love the forced proximity at a corporate retreat. It just felt like, it's like you, as someone who has been on those corporate retreats, it's like, you don't want to, you just don't want to go back to them. You're like, oh my gosh, like, the amount of bonding time and team building that needs to happen. And you're like, I don't want to be with these people. Like, I want to take a break. Like, I want to take a vacation.
Well, it also sets up interesting, like unique environment that you can have the characters bond, because that's the problem. Like when you're writing a book, no one wants to read about them sitting at home watching TV. So you're always having to create ideas that are unique so that the reader's interested. And sometimes you kind of run out of ideas. So for me, it was like, oh, I could do some really wonky, weird things and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they can go canoeing, they can go fishing, they can go
paddleboard yoga.
Paddleboard yoga. I was like, oh my gosh, you can do all these different things in this
we're a retreat where we're just kumbayaing our way to a promotion. So I love this. So let's talk about Hard to Handle and the sports agent series that you have coming up. First of all, I'm obsessed with hockey, so I was very excited to read a hockey romance, you know. But what should we expect for the next few books in the series?
So the 4 sports I've decided to write about are, the first one was hockey. The second one will be soccer or football if you're overseas. And then I'll have a baseball and a football book. The baseball book, I'll be revisiting some old characters from my the Player and the Catch series.
Ooh.
But for me, I like to write about sports because I think there's something about athletes. There's like a cockiness to them and an arrogance, but at the same time, they have to like take it down a notch because they're a player of a member of a team. So it's an easy thing to feed off of for me as an author. And I also love kind of like the enemies to lovers feel. So there's something combative about athletes to me. So you'll be seeing 4 headstrong women, kind of fighting their attraction because, how can you represent an athlete when you're sleeping with them?
Yeah.
It's not exactly fair. So that's actually been a struggle that when I decided to do the series, I didn't really think about that aspect of it. And then I got into it and I was like, oh crap, like, how do I do that? So each one has their own set of issues. But yeah, I'll run the gamut. The first one had some heavy moments. The second one's going to be a little bit lighter. I just kind of, each character kind of comes to me as I go. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I love the fact that it's a sports romance. Like, I think, we were just getting to the period where there was no sport. So, like, looking back and we're like, oh, there's, like, opportunities to find sports in romance. Like, that's kind of, like, a fun thing to do. That's coming out of the pandemic. So,
yes, and I think, and this sounds bad, but there are some people who write sports romance that don't watch sports.
Yeah.
And I'm an avid sports watcher just because I am.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to be said about someone who actually watches it when they write it. So, I try really hard to make sure it's all legitimate and is valid. So
yes.
Not that that really matters when you're getting into the romance part.
It does, but as someone who I really love hockey romance, it's one of my favorite ones in terms of sports romance in the genre. And I have to say, like, one of my biggest complaints at times is like, oh, there's not enough hockey. There's not enough like action or reminder of the sports. Like, it's just a lot of romance, and it's like, but we want to have some of the sports part. And so authors that do watch sport or fans of it they tend to make sure that it's included, so it feels like a holistic point of view as opposed to just having like just a romance who just happen to have who happens to be a hockey.
Well, yeah, I mean, the athletes, the hero is an athlete, so it's part of who they are, so you can't deny that part of it.
Yep. So tell us where we can find you online.
You can find me anywhere there's social media. My website's www.kbromberg.com. And then I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all the boring, normal places. I'm trying to talk my daughter into teaching me how to get on TikTok. And she's like, no way, Mom. Like, that's embarrassing. So I think I'm just going to do it just to embarrass the hell out of her.
Yes.
The last thing I need is one more social media to have to manage. But if it's worth making my daughter like roll her eyes again, then we're good.
Well, I think you could do some TikTok dancing and some TikTok.
I think so.
Book cover.
Do some twerking to embarrass her.
Yeah, do some TikTok. Like, you can do. The possibilities are endless there.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I can't wait to watch your TikTok. So thank you, Kristy, for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me so much.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, or rate and review the show. This is the easiest way to support this podcast. Want to join a romance-loving community? Want weekly book recommendations, monthly author Q&As, and book recommendation meetups? Make new friends? Then join our Patreon community. To sign up, please follow the links in the show notes. What to Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts to love on frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.